Hello class, let us now proceed on our video lecture regarding on your Module 1, which of course is part of your subject on ethics. Well, in this topic, we are going to be discussing your meaning of ethics and other key concepts which forms the fundamental principles of your subject regarding here. To start it off, let us now look upon the concept of your ethics. Well, what is ethics? So class, ethics is a set of rules or guidelines that helps us decide if something we do is good or bad, or rather, right or wrong. It's all about figuring out what's the right way to behave, and that think of ethics as a kind of moral guidelines which helps us decide what actions or behaviors are right or wrong, or rather, which is good or bad. So imagine class that you have a set of guidelines in your mind that help you make decisions in your life. These guidelines might come from your family, or rather your culture, or that of your personal belief. And that, for example, if you believe it's wrong to steal, well, that's an ethical belief. If you think it's good to help others, well, that's also an ethical belief. Class, remember that ethics is the study of these beliefs and principles and how they guide our behavior in the society itself. Well class, let us move on towards the next concept of your topic, which is of course the concept of philosophy. Remember class that philosophy is a discipline where we seek answers towards a certain thing by asking questions. Remember that philosophy is like deep thinking about life, or rather the universe, and of course everything in between. It's not about memorizing facts, and it's about using your brain to explore the biggest and most fundamental questions. These questions can be about the nature of reality, the purpose of life, or the concept of truth. Well, philosophers don't just look about simple answers, they ask why things are the way they are and try to understand the underlying principles of the world using reason and critical thinking. Philosophy is a word that comes from two Greek words, which is first, philo, which means love, and that Sophia is our second word, which means wisdom. So when you put them together, you get the word love of wisdom. So that is what your philosophy is. It seeks knowledge through seeking questions. So in simple term class, philosophy is all about asking big questions and trying to figure out the answers. It's like when you wonder about things like, why are we here? Or what's the right thing to do? Or that, how do we know that this thing is true? So those are philosophical questions. So philosophy is the love of thinking deeply and trying to understand the world and ourselves better. It's like a way of using our minds to explore the mysteries of life. Now let us look upon the concept of your morality. Well, morality class is one of the words that mostly comes from our mind when we are speaking of ethics. So here, class, morality is a part of our moral guidelines or our moral directions that we of course practice or of course think in our society itself. So here, morality is the set of rules, principles, and values that you follow to determine what is right and wrong. So let us say, for example, class, if you believe lying is wrong, that's a moral value. Well, morality is like your personal rule book for how you should treat others and make choices in your life. If you think it's important to be kind and honest, those are part of your morality. So morality helps you make decisions based on what you believe is good or bad behavior, and it guides how you interact with people and the world around you. Well, it's like having a moral compass or a direction that helps you navigate through life's choices and, of course, your challenges. Now, moving on towards your concept of ethics, so going back, we now look at ethics as the science of moral duty, of ideal human character, and of course, the standards of human conduct, which we will be providing a brief background about it, or a brief breakdown about it. So here in class, the science of moral duty refers to the study of what we should do to be good, responsible individuals. It's about understanding our obligations and responsibilities towards others, such as being honest, or that treating people with kindness, and of course, acting fairly. Well, the science of ideal human character, which is part of the fundamentals when we speak about ethics, involves thinking about the best qualities a person can possess, like being compassionate, honest, and respectful, and that it encourages us to strive towards embodying these qualities in our lives or absorbing these qualities in our lives. Well, lastly, speaking of the standards of human conduct, these are like the rules or guidelines that helps us determine what is right or wrong in our behavior and interactions with others. These standards serves as the benchmarks guiding us in making ethical decisions and aligning our actions with our moral values. In essence, this terms class collectively explores the principles and guidelines that shape our moral compass or our moral direction and guide our actions to be better and a more virtuous individuals. Now, moving on towards the second fundamentals of your ethics, which is according to your slide, which says that ethics is the study of methods and principles used to distinguish good from bad and right from wrong actions. So here, class, in other words, ethics attempts to understand the desirable types of human actions. Well, ethics is like a guide for figuring out what is good and bad and that right and wrong in how people would behave. It's like a set of rules or principles that helps us decide how we should act in different situations. So class, let us say for example, it tells us that being honest and kind is good while lying and being rude is bad. Ethics is all about trying to understand what kinds of action are best for people to do, and it helps us make choices that are considered right and desirable in our society. Now let us take a look about ethics as part of your moral philosophy. In your slide, it states that your ethics evaluates moral concepts, values, principles, and standards. So in here, class, in explaining this, your ethics is like a judge that looks at and thinks about ideas and rules that are related to what is right and wrong. Well, it considers things like honesty, kindness, fairness, and other values we think are important in how people should behave. It's like asking, is it good to be honest? Or is it right to help others? Well, your ethics helps us examine and decide what we believe is morally right or wrong. So here, under your second part where ethics is seen as part of your moral philosophy, it states that your ethics is concerned with norms of human conduct. Hence, it is considered a normative study of human actions. So in here, class, you have to think of ethics as a guide for how people should act. It's not just about describing what people do, but it's about setting standards or norms for how people should behave. So when we say it's a normative study, it means it helps us or your ethics helps us figure out the norms or rules for how we should act. Your ethics doesn't just observe human actions, but it tells us how we should ideally act based on moral principles. On to your branches of philosophy in ethics, we have 3 branches that is therefore stated in your PowerPoint. So these branches are your meta-ethics, your normative ethics, and your applied ethics. So first and foremost, let us discuss your meta-ethics, which is first presented by your PowerPoint. Your meta-ethics class focuses on morality itself and that it involves bigger picture questions. In here, meta-ethics explores the very nature of morality itself. And instead of debating specific moral issues like whether lying is wrong, your meta-ethics seeks to ask deeper questions about the meaning and origin of moral concepts. It delves into inquiries like, is there a universal truth behind what is right or wrong? Or is it all relative to different cultures and individuals? In class, your meta-ethics also tackles the question of whether moral statements can be considered objectively true, similar to statements in science, or if they are more like personal opinions. Well, it's like looking behind the scenes of our moral beliefs, trying to understand where they come from and pondering whether there's an ultimate moral reality or if it's all a matter of human perception and culture. So let us say, for example, in a regular ethics conversation, you might debate whether stealing is wrong. Well, in meta-ethics, you will be asking, why do we consider stealing wrong? Is there a universal truth that makes it wrong? Or is it just a matter of personal opinion? Well, class, your meta-ethics is like digging deeper into the foundations of our moral beliefs and trying to figure out where they originate. So here are some examples. How do we know if something is morally good or bad, and how can we prove it? Another example of your meta-ethics is, are moral values and principles the same for everyone, or do they vary from one culture or society to another? Or that, is there such a thing as an absolute right and wrong? Or is morality purely a matter of personal opinion? So these three questions is an example of your meta-ethics which digs deeper regarding on your ethical principles. The second branch of your moral philosophy and ethics is your normative ethics. Your normative ethics answers questions like, what do we ought to do? Which prescribes actions and decisions for what is right or wrong. Class, normative ethics serves as a guide for making choices in life. It helps us decide what we should do and what we should avoid to be good and moral people. So in here, it provides practical advice and rules on how to act in various situations, like being honest, fair, and kind. Normative ethics gives us a roadmap for making decisions that align with what's considered right and ethical in our society. It's like a set of instructions for being a good person. Under the examples of your normative ethics, we have your utilitarianism, your deontology, and of course your virtue ethics. But first and foremost, let us discuss your utilitarianism, which is part of your normative ethics. Well, utilitarianism is an ethical theory that focuses on the outcomes or consequences of actions when determining what is morally right or wrong. In essence, it suggests that morality of an action is determined by the overall balance of happiness or utility it produces for individuals affected by that actions. The core principle of utilitarianism can be summarized by the phrase, the greatest good for the greatest number of people. This means that, according to utilitarianism, the morally right action is the one that maximizes overall happiness or well-being and minimizes suffering for the greatest number of individuals. The proponents of utilitarianism include philosophers such as John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham. They have contributed significantly to the development and popularization of this ethical theory. So class, in general terms, utilitarianism encourages decision-makers to weigh the potential consequences of their actions and choose the course of action that produces the greatest overall benefit. This can involve assessing the effects on happiness, pleasure, or well-being, and considering the interests and preferences of all parties involved. Utilitarianism class is often used in moral and ethical discussions to analyze and evaluate the consequences of various actions or policies with the aim of promoting the greatest overall good in a given situation. However, it is also subject of debate and criticism as determining what constitutes the greatest good and how to measure it can be complex and contentious in practice. The second example of your normative ethics is your deontology. Well, class, your deontology is an ethical theory that emphasizes the morality of an action based on whether the action itself is inherently right or wrong rather than solely considering the consequences or outcomes of the actions. In other words, deontological ethics looks at the principles, rules, and duties that guides human behavior and judges the morality of an action based on its adherence to these ethical principles. The key proponent of deontology is the German philosopher Immanuel Kant. Kant's ethical framework is of course associated with the idea of duty and is sometimes referred to as duty-based ethics. So in general terms, class, deontology suggests that there are certain moral principles and rules that individuals must follow, regardless of the potential outcomes or consequences. These principles are often expressed as categorical imperatives, which are universal and unconditional moral laws that apply to all rational beings. Kant had argued that actions should be guided by these moral laws, and individuals have a moral duty to act in accordance with these principles. Well, class, the third example of your normative ethics is your virtue ethics. In here, class, your virtue ethics is an ethical theory that centers on the focusing of moral character and emphasizes the development of virtuous qualities in individuals. Unlike some other ethical approaches, virtue ethics focuses less on specific rules or the consequences of actions and more on questions of what it means to be morally virtuous person. So the proponents of your virtue ethics include Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, who believe that through moral education, practice, and looking up virtuous role models, individuals can attain and embody virtues such as courage, wisdom, and justice, leading to a life of flourishing and well-being known as eudaimonia, or achieving the greatest happiness in life. So virtue ethics encourages individuals to continually strive for moral excellence and to make decisions guided by their virtuous character. The third branch of your moral philosophy is your applied ethics. Your applied ethics class addresses practical issues of specific moral challenges in the daily lives of individuals, such as will a person lie just to help a friend or a colleague, or decisions on issues such as your abortion or euthanasia, which means mercy killing. Your applied ethics is like the practical side of ethics, where we tackle real-life moral questions and dilemmas that people encounter every day. It helps us figure out what is right or wrong in specific situations. So for instance, in applied ethics, we might discuss whether it's okay to tell a small kind of lie to spare someone's feelings. So let's say for example, such as telling a friend that their new haircut looks great when you don't really think so, in order to avoid hurting the feelings of your friends. So other examples include addressing complex issues like whether abortion should be allowed or whether it's ethical to assist someone in ending their own life through euthanasia or mercy killing when they're suffering from a terminal illness. Applied ethics provides guidance on how to make morally sound decisions in these practical everyday situations. It's like a moral compass for navigating the complexities of our lives. Now let us go on to ethics as it relates to character. So under your PowerPoint slide, your character is the pattern of virtues and vices that is revealed in life and relationship of individual. So in here class, remember that your character is like a collection of your most consistent qualities and behaviors. It's not just about one action or decision, but it's about how you generally act and relate to others in your life. So for example, if you're consistently kind, fair, and respectful in your interactions with people, that's a sign of good character. On the other hand, if you regularly lie, cheat, or treat others poorly, that reflects a different kind of character. So in here, words like generous, conscientious, and honest refers to morally good character traits which therefore defines your virtues. Your virtues, class, are like the shining qualities that make people not only good but admirable. So generosity means you're willing to share what you have with others, whether it's your time, money, or resources. And that being conscientious means you're diligent and responsible in your actions and commitments. Honesty, class, means that you tell the truth even when it's difficult. So these virtues are the positive aspects of character that we aspire to have because they lead to good and ethical behavior. On the other hand, class, words like envious, insensitive, and vain refer to morally bad character, which therefore refers to your vices. So your vices, class, are like the dark spots in a person's character, the qualities that lead to negative behavior and harm to others. So in here, class, envy is a vice because it involves feeling resentment or jealousy towards others' success or possessions. Insensitivity reflects a lack of empathy and consideration for others' feelings, which causes harm through indifference. Your vanity is a vice, class, because it involves excessive self-absorption and an obsession with one's appearance or importance, often at the expense of others. Your vices are the negative aspects of your character that we try to avoid or overcome because they have led to unethical and harmful actions. Now moving on towards the basic assumptions of ethics, the first assumption of your ethics is that man is a rational being. In here, class, this idea have highlighted that humans have the unique ability to think, analyze, and make decisions that are based on reason and understanding. So unlike animals that mostly acts on instincts and reflexes, we can reflect on our actions. So let us say, for example, imagine that you have a piece of chocolate cake in front of you and that you can think about whether it's a good idea to eat it considering your health and your prior commitment to diet, or if you should resist the temptation. So this ability to reason helps us determine if our actions are morally right or wrong, as we can evaluate their consequences and intentions. Second basic assumption that you must remember, class, is that man is free. So this assumption points out the concept of human freedom, the idea that we have the power to choose our actions, thoughts, and words within societal and legal boundaries, which we're generally free to decide how we want to live our lives. So for instance, class, you have the freedom to choose your career, your friends, and of course your hobbies, and that, however, class, with freedom comes responsibility. So let us say you have the freedom to express your opinion on social media. Well, class, it is your choice whether to use that freedom to spread kindness or to engage in hurtful behavior. So this freedom also means you have the responsibility to make choices that align with what you believe is good or right, which is a fundamental aspect of ethics.